The throne room doors burst open with such force that every guard's hand flew to their weapon. Lysandra stumbled through, her omega scent flooding the space with distress pheromones so potent that several betas stepped back. Her silk dress hung in tatters, silver hair escaping its braids to cascade wildly around her shoulders. "Please," she gasped, falling to her knees before the obsidian throne where Alpha King Theron held court. "I need sanctuary. Hide me, please, Your Majesty, before he—" The king rose slowly, his presence commanding instant silence from the 100 courtiers who'd been presenting petitions. Theron Blackmore was not known for mercy. At 32, he'd built his reputation on brutal efficiency and an iron will that had united 7 fractured territories. Yet something in this Omega's scent made his wolf stir, not with desire, but with an inexplicable need to protect. "Who pursues you?" His voice rumbled through the hall like distant thunder. Lysandra's jade eyes lifted to meet his golden ones, and for a heartbeat, neither moved. She'd seen him before from the servants' balconies during ceremonies, watched as he'd rejected princess after princess. She'd thought him cold then. Now, up close, she saw something else, a loneliness that matched her own. "My mate," she whispered, the word bitter as poison. "Duke Aldrich Shadowmere. He rejected me publicly 3 nights ago at the Harvest Ball for a younger Omega. But now he's changed his mind, says it's his right by law to reclaim me." The hall erupted in whispers, a rejected Omega seeking protection from their fated mate. Unprecedented. Theron's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He knew Duke Shadowmere, an arrogant alpha from the northern reaches who collected Omegas like trophies. The law technically supported the Duke's claim. A mate bond, even rejected, gave certain rights until formally dissolved by the High Council. "Rise," Theron commanded, descending the throne steps with predatory grace. His royal guard, led by Captain Zara Ironwing, tensed as he approached the kneeling Omega. It wasn't like their king to involve himself in domestic disputes. Lysandra stood shakily, her head barely reaching the king's shoulder. This close, Theron caught her true scent beneath the fear. Winter jasmine and mountain snow, with something else that made his wolf pace restlessly. "You were part of the palace staff," he stated. He'd noticed her before, though he'd pretended otherwise. She was the healer's apprentice who hummed while tending the gardens, who left honey cakes for the guard wolves, who always seemed to vanish whenever he entered a room. "Yes, Your Majesty. I work for Master Healer Corvus." "And Shadowmere rejected you publicly?" Her chin lifted slightly, defiance breaking through desperation. "At the Harvest Ball 3 nights ago. Called me defective, said my scent was wrong, that I was too old at 26 to give him strong pups. He chose Lady Celeste instead. She's 17. Behind them, Minister Hadrian cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, while unfortunate, the law states—" "I know the law," Theron cut him off sharply. His eyes never left Lysandra's face. "Tell me, Omega, what exactly do you want from me?" She swallowed hard. 3 weeks. Just hide me for 3 weeks until the High Council meets. I can petition for formal dissolution then. Once it's granted, he can't force a claim. And if he challenges my interference? Then I'll face the consequences. But please," her voice cracked, "I'd rather die than bear his mark after what he did. After he paraded that girl around, announcing how superior she was." Something dangerous flashed in Theron's eyes. Guard Captain Ironwing. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Prepare the Azure Tower. Our guest will be staying there." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Azure Tower was part of the royal family's private wing, untouched since Queen Mother Seraphina's death 5 years ago. "But Your Majesty," Hadrian protested, "Duke Shadowmere will demand." "Let him demand," Theron said softly, his tone carrying enough menace to silence the hall. He turned back to Lysandra. You'll be under my personal protection. Anyone who wants to claim you will have to go through me first." Before Lysandra could respond, the throne room doors slammed open again. Duke Aldrich Shadowmere strode in, his alpha pheromones aggressive and possessive, followed by 20 guards. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his clothing immaculate. Every inch the privileged alpha who'd never been denied anything. "I've come for my Omega," he announced, cold blue eyes scanning until they landed on Lysandra. A cruel smile curved his lips. "Hello, little mouse. Did you really think you could run?" Lysandra instinctively stepped backward, colliding with something solid and warm. She didn't need to look to know it was Theron. His scent, wood smoke and storm-swept mountains, enveloped her like armor. "Duke Shadowmere." Theron's voice was deceptively calm. "I wasn't aware we had an appointment." Aldrich's eyes narrowed, noting how close the king stood to his rejected mate. "No appointment needed when I'm collecting what's mine." "Stand aside, Your Majesty. This is a private matter." "Curious. 3 nights ago, you publicly declared this Omega unworthy. Your exact words, I believe, were defective goods I wouldn't breed with if she were the last Omega alive. My intelligence network is quite thorough." The Duke's face flushed. "A temporary lapse in judgment. The mate bond you rejected in front of 300 witnesses?" Captain Zara interjected, hand resting on her sword. "Rejection can be rescinded if unconsummated," Aldrich snapped. "The law is clear." "As is the law of sanctuary," Theron countered smoothly. "Any Omega who fears for their safety may seek royal protection pending formal review." "She's being dramatic. I would never harm." "You threw wine in her face," Lysandra interrupted, her voice stronger with Theron behind her. "Called me a barren waste. You had your guards drag me from the ball while everyone laughed." "Emotional outbursts aren't physical harm," Aldrich argued, though several courtiers muttered disapprovingly. "Besides, Lady Celeste has proven unsuitable. Too young, too flighty. I need a mature Omega." "How convenient," Theron drawled. "You need a mature Omega now that the child you chose bored you." The Duke took a threatening step forward. "Careful, Your Majesty. I have significant support among the Northern Lords." The temperature seemed to drop. "Are you threatening your king, Shadowmere?" Before the Duke could respond, Theron raised his hand. "But let's resolve this simply. The law states an Omega can choose to accept or deny a rescinded rejection, correct?" Hadrian nodded reluctantly. "Technically true, sire." "Then let's ask her." Theron stepped aside, leaving Lysandra exposed but somehow still protected by his proximity. "What say you, Lady Lysandra?" "Your mate wishes to reclaim you." The use of lady before her name sent ripples through the crowd. Commoners weren't addressed as such unless— "I refuse," Lysandra said clearly. "I choose sanctuary until the High Council can formally dissolve this bond." Aldrich's face contorted with rage. "You can't. You're mine by divine right." "Actually," a new voice interrupted from the side entrance, "that's where you're wrong." Master Healer Corvus entered, ancient robes sweeping the floor. At 90, he commanded respect from all. He carried an ornate scroll that made Hadrian's eyes widen. "What I hold here," Corvus announced, "is Lady Lysandra's true birth record, sealed by magic until her 26th birthday, which was yesterday." He unrolled the parchment slowly. "Lysandra Moonweaver, daughter of Lord Marcus Moonweaver and Lady Alara Starling, both deceased. Hidden as a commoner for her protection after her parents were killed in the territorial wars." The hall erupted. Lysandra's legs nearly gave out. She'd known she was adopted, but this— "She's nobility?" Aldrich sputtered. "High nobility," Corvus corrected with satisfaction. "The Moonweaver line is older than yours, Duke, which means she outranks you socially. and your public rejection of a noble lady without proper cause is grounds for immediate dissolution. The Moonweavers also carry unique gifts, including the power of permanent rejection, should they invoke it. The silence following Corvus's revelation was deafening. Lysandra's mind reeled. Noble blood? Her entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. She felt Theron's hand brush her elbow, steadying her without making it obvious. "This changes nothing," Aldrich snarled, though his confidence had cracked. "Noble or not, the mate bond." "The mate bond you publicly severed with a higher-ranking Omega?" Theron interrupted, Predator's smile playing at his lips. Lady Lysandra could demand satisfaction through combat if she wished. "I don't want combat," Lysandra said quietly. "I just want freedom." But Aldrich wasn't looking at her anymore, his eyes fixed on Theron with growing suspicion. "You knew. You knew who she was." "I suspected," Theron admitted casually. "The Moonweaver eyes are quite distinctive. That particular shade of jade is hereditary." "Then why—" Aldrich's expression shifted to cunning. "Unless you want her for yourself?" The accusation hung like a blade. Several courtiers gasped. Even Captain Zara looked sharply at her king. Theron's expression remained marble smooth. "I am protecting a member of my court who sought sanctuary." "Really?" Aldrich stepped closer, tone mocking. "The king who's rejected every Omega presented suddenly develops altruism? When she smells like—" He inhaled deliberately, eyes widening. "Interesting. Her scent's changed. There's something else mixed in now." Lysandra flushed. She knew what he meant. Since Theron had stood near her, their scents had begun mingling in a way that suggested. "Enough," Theron commanded. "Lady Lysandra remains under royal protection. Challenge it formally if you dare." "This isn't over," Aldrich hissed. "The High Council will hear of this interference. And you." He looked at Lysandra with venom. "You'll regret this when you're still unmated and alone. No alpha will want Shadowmere's rejected leftovers." He turned to leave but paused at the door. "Oh, and your Majesty? Lady Celeste will be visiting court next week. As an unclaimed Omega of noble birth, I'm sure you'll extend her the same protection." After the Duke's departure, the throne room slowly emptied until only Theron's inner circle remained. Lysandra swayed on her feet. "Steady," Theron murmured, his hand finding the small of her back. "Corvus, is it true? About her heritage?" The healer nodded gravely. "Every word. Her parents entrusted her to me before the final battle. They knew they wouldn't survive but wanted their daughter to live free of the burden until she was old enough." "Why didn't you tell me?" Lysandra asked, voice small. "Your parents' orders were specific. Not until your 26th birthday. That's when a Moonweaver's power fully manifests." Corvus studied her carefully. "Have you noticed anything unusual? Dreams? Visions?" Lysandra's breath caught. She had been having dreams, vivid ones about a wolf with golden eyes protecting her from shadows. But that was before today, before she'd even formally met. She glanced at Theron, who was watching her intently. "We should continue privately," he decided. "Captain Zara, double security. Shadowmere won't give up easily. Corvus, bring everything on the Moonweaver line to my study." As the room cleared, Theron turned to Lysandra. "Can you walk?" "I'm fine," she lied, then immediately stumbled. Without hesitation, he swept her into his arms, ignoring her squeak of protest. "You're exhausted and probably haven't eaten in days. Put me down. People will talk." "Let them." He carried her toward the royal wing, holding her carefully against his chest. His scent enveloped her completely now, and her Omega instincts purred in contentment. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked softly. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, just as they reached the Azure Tower, he spoke. Because I know what it's like to be trapped by others' expectations. He set her down gently. And because I've been watching you since you arrived 2 years ago, waiting for an excuse to finally speak to you. Before she could process this confession, shouting erupted from the courtyard. They rushed to the window to see Lady Celeste's carriage arriving. Early. The young Omega stepped out, breathtakingly beautiful with golden hair and sapphire eyes, but her gaze went straight to the tower window where Theron stood. She smiled, cold and calculating. Your Majesty, I've come to seek sanctuary too. My alpha has been so cruel, rejecting me for another. Surely you'll protect me as well. Theron's expression hardened as he assessed the situation below. Lady Celeste stood in the courtyard, surrounded by carefully arranged luggage, her dress torn just enough to suggest distress without compromising modesty, tears glistening perfectly on her cheeks. Stay here, he commanded Lysandra, but she grabbed his arm. It's a trap. If you protect her too, Aldrich can claim you're collecting Omegas. The council already questions why you haven't taken a mate. Theron studied her, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. You're politically astute for someone raised as a commoner. Corvus taught me to observe. Servants hear everything. Then observe this. Sometimes the best way to spring a trap is to walk into it knowingly. He strode from the room. From the window, Lysandra watched him emerge into the courtyard, his presence immediately commanding attention. Lady Celeste threw herself at his feet with practiced dramatics. Please, Your Majesty. Duke Shadowmere cast me aside after only 3 days. He wants his true mate back, but I have nowhere to go. Lysandra's enhanced hearing, apparently part of her awakening Moonweaver heritage, picked up Theron's response clearly. Rise, Lady Celeste. Sanctuary requests are heard formally in the throne room, not performed in my courtyard like street theater. The young Omega stood, irritation flashing across her face before smoothing back to distress. Of course, Your Majesty. I simply thought, given how quickly you aided Lady Lysandra. Lady Lysandra's situation involved immediate physical threat, Captain Zara interrupted, appearing at the king's side. You arrived in a luxury carriage with 12 trunks, hardly the same urgency. However, Theron continued, you may present your case tomorrow morning. Tonight, you'll be housed in the guest wing. Lysandra watched Celeste's jaw clench. Clearly, she'd expected to be placed near Lysandra to cause problems. But before anyone could respond, a new commotion erupted. A messenger on an exhausted horse nearly fell from his saddle, bearing High Council colors. Emergency session, he gasped. All parties in the Shadowmere Moonweaver dispute are summoned immediately. The council convenes at sunset. Lysandra's blood ran cold. The High Council never moved this fast unless... Someone paid them, she breathed. Aldrich bribed them to hear the case before I could build a defense. Within an hour, Lysandra found herself in borrowed court attire, deep purple emphasizing her newly acknowledged noble status. Theron had insisted, overriding her protests. Image matters with the council, he'd said, then surprised her by fastening a delicate silver necklace around her throat. This bears the royal seal. It marks you as under my personal protection. Now they stood in the ancient council chamber, 3 elderly alphas and betas presiding from raised seats. Duke Shadowmere stood opposite, Lady Celeste at his side in calculated display. This is highly irregular, Chief Counselor Blackstone intoned. Duke Shadowmere, state your grievance. Aldrich stepped forward smoothly. I wish to reclaim my true mate, as is my right. The king has interfered unlawfully, and I suspect his motives are far from altruistic. That's a serious accusation, Blackstone noted. Your Majesty? Theron's voice was ice-cold calm. Lady Lysandra sought sanctuary, I granted it. The law is clear. Ah, but which law? Aldrich smiled triumphantly. I've discovered something interesting. The Moonweaver line carries unique traits. Their omegas can form secondary bonds if their first is severed. It's why they were hunted during the territorial wars. Lysandra felt Theron stiffen beside her. I propose a test, Aldrich announced. The bonding trial. If Lady Lysandra has begun forming a secondary bond with our king, which would explain his sudden protectiveness, then she's moved past our connection. But if our bond remains primary, she belongs with me. The bonding trial is ancient law, Counselor Blackstone said slowly. If invoked, both alphas must participate. The Omega's true bond will manifest. Both alphas? Theron's voice carried danger. I'm not claiming... Aren't you? Aldrich challenged. Then you won't mind participating. Unless you're afraid? The trap was perfectly sprung. If Theron refused, it would seem like admission. If he participated and no bond showed, Lysandra would be forced back to Aldrich. I need a moment with my ward, Theron requested. Granted 5 minutes, they retreated to the antechamber. Lysandra was trembling. What's a bonding trial? Theron's jaw clenched tight. Both alphas release their full pheromones simultaneously. Your omega nature will respond to whichever bond is stronger. It's invasive, humiliating, and once demonstrated, unbreakable legally. So if I respond to Aldrich, you'll be his immediately. Theron's eyes blazed. But there's something else. If you respond to me instead? A secondary bond, she whispered, understanding dawning. But we've barely interacted. How could... Sometimes bonds form without our knowledge, waiting for the right moment. He met her gaze. You feel it too. This pull between us. Since the first day you arrived 2 years ago, he admitted. But I never acted because you were... I thought you were common born. I couldn't subject you to the court's cruelty. And then when Shadowmere claimed you, his hands clenched. I nearly killed him at that ball. They returned to find an ancient ceremonial circle drawn in salt and wolfsbane. The burning herbs would intensify whatever bonds existed, making them impossible to hide. The rules are simple, Blackstone announced. Both alphas stand at opposite edges, the omega in the center. When the moon bell tolls, both release their full pheromonal presence. The omega's response shows the true bond. This is archaic, Theron protested once more. Wishes change. Biology doesn't lie, Aldrich interrupted smugly. Lady Celeste watched from the gallery with barely concealed excitement. Other nobles had gathered, drawn by Scandal's promise. Lysandra noticed Corvus gripping his staff with white knuckles. Take your positions. Lysandra stood in the circle's center, heart pounding. Theron positioned himself to her left, controlled fury radiating from every line of his body. Aldrich stood right, confidence oozing from every pore. When you feel your true bond pull, walk to that alpha. Fighting will only cause pain. The moon bell tolled. On the third strike, both alphas released their pheromones. The effect was instantaneous. Aldrich's scent, pine and winter frost, slammed into her like a remembered nightmare. Her omega instincts recoiled violently, but a poisonous thread remained, the remnant of their severed bond trying to reassert itself. Then Theron's scent hit. Wood smoke, mountain storms, and something that sang to her soul. Her wolf surged forward, desperate to reach him. But she forced herself still, letting both scents battle within. Interesting, Blackstone murmured. She's fighting both. Lysandra's body shook. The conflicting pheromones were tearing her apart. She fell to her knees, whimpering. Stop this, Corvus shouted. You're hurting her. The trial continues until she chooses, Blackstone stated coldly. Through her pain, Lysandra heard Aldrich laugh. See? She still feels our bond. Come to me, little mouse. But then Theron spoke. cutting through everything. Lysandra, look at me. She raised her head, meeting his honeyed gaze across the circle. What she saw there stole her breath. Not just desire or possession, but genuine fear for her, rage at her pain, and something deeper that looked like devotion. I won't force you, he said softly, though she knew the effort of restraining his pheromones while Aldrich pushed harder must be excruciating. Choose freely. Whatever you decide, I'll ensure you're protected. His willingness to let her go, to prioritize her choice over his obvious desire, it shattered something inside her. The Moonweaver power Corvus had mentioned blazed to life, her eyes glowing with ethereal jade light. She stood slowly, power radiating from her frame. When she spoke, her voice carried otherworldly resonance. You rejected me, Aldrich Shadowmere. You severed our bond with cruelty and malice. By the ancient laws of the Moonweaver line, I reject you thrice in return. Aldrich staggered as if struck. That's not possible. Once for the humiliation. She walked toward him. Twice for the betrayal of a sacred bond, and thrice. She stopped just out of reach, glowing eyes boring into his. For daring to try to reclaim what you so carelessly discarded. A visible thread of silver light appeared between them, their mate bond made manifest. Then it shattered like glass, dissolving into nothing. Aldrich screamed, falling to his knees as the backlash hit. Lysandra turned, her glowing gaze finding Theron. The power flowing through her showed her everything, how he'd been searching for his mate for years, how he'd noticed her the day she arrived but kept his distance, how he'd refused other Omegas because his wolf had already chosen. You knew, she said wonderingly. All this time, you knew. Suspected, hoped, but I couldn't be certain, and I refused to use my position. She crossed the circle in 3 strides and kissed him. The moment their lips met, a new bond exploded between them, not twisted and possessive like Aldrich's, but golden and warm and right. The entire chamber gasped as visible threads of light wound around them both, the mark of a true mate bond, blessed by the moon goddess herself. When they broke apart, Lysandra's eyes had returned to normal, but Theron's glowed gold. Well, Blackstone cleared his throat. That's definitive. Impossible. Aldrich struggled to his feet. She's mine. The bond is permanently severed, Corvus announced, having hobbled into the circle. The Moonweaver line's thrice rejection is irreversible. You'll never be able to bond with another Omega. The color drained from Aldrich's face. For an alpha, especially a noble one, being unable to bond meant no heirs, no political marriages, nothing. You've ruined me, he whispered to Lysandra. No. Theron stepped protectively in front of his mate. You ruined yourself the moment you rejected her for a child you didn't even want. Lady Celeste was trying to slip away unnoticed, but Captain Zara caught her. Not so fast. You're going to explain your role in this scheme. The interrogation revealed everything. Lady Celeste, desperate for status, had agreed to seduce Aldrich away from Lysandra in exchange for a generous settlement once he reclaimed his true mate. They'd planned to keep Lysandra as essentially a breeding slave while Celeste enjoyed the privileges of being the Duke's public consort. It would have worked, Celeste spat, all pretense gone, if the king hadn't interfered. Everyone knows she's just a servant playing dress-up. Careful, Theron warned, voice lethal. You're speaking about my mate and future queen. The reality hit the room. The unmated king who'd rejected every eligible Omega for years had just publicly soul-bonded with a woman who'd been a servant until hours ago. The noble houses will revolt, Hadrian muttered. A Moonweaver, Corvus corrected firmly. One of the oldest bloodlines. Her parents were heroes who died protecting this kingdom. Besides, Captain Zara added with a smirk, anyone who wants to challenge the king's choice can face him in single combat. As the council dispersed and Aldrich was dragged away to face charges, Theron led Lysandra to a private balcony overlooking the city. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, fingers gently tracing her face. "The trial, your powers awakening, the bond." She leaned into his touch. "I've been better. But also, never this good." She looked up at him. "How long have you really known?" "Known? Only when you kissed me. Suspected? When you'd been here about a year. Hoped? From the moment you smiled at that guard puppy who'd gotten lost and helped him find his way back." "That was my first week," she said, surprised. "I know. When you smiled, my wolf nearly took control. I had to leave court for 3 days to regain composure." "Is that why you avoided the healing wing?" "Desperately. Your scent is intoxicating. Always has been." He pulled her closer. "But I convinced myself it was just attraction, that I had no right. You were under my protection as a palace servant. The power imbalance would have been wrong." "So you rejected all those omegas instead?" "None of them were you." He said it simply, like the most obvious thing in the world. My wolf knew. Lysandra cupped his face. "We're idiots, aren't we? All this time wasted." "Perhaps. Or perhaps this was exactly how it needed to happen." He kissed her palm. "You needed to discover who you are, and I needed to prove I wanted you for you, not your bloodline. And now?" "Now," he smiled, transforming his usually stern face. "Now I court you properly. Just because we're bonded doesn't mean you don't deserve romance." "Theron, let me do this right," he murmured against her lips. "Let me show the world you're not just my mate, but my choice. My queen. My everything." Before she could respond, Captain Zara appeared, looking amused. "Your Majesty, we have a situation. If Aldrich—" "No, sire. It's the palace staff. They're celebrating. Apparently they've been placing bets on when you'd finally notice Lady Lysandra for the past 18 months. The kitchen staff just won a fortune." Lysandra burst out laughing. "They knew?" "Everyone knew," Zara confirmed. "Except you two." "Oh, and Corvus asked me to give you this." Inside was a delicate silver ring bearing the Moonweaver crest, a wolf howling at a crescent moon. "It was your mother's," Corvus's note read. "She would have been proud. The king is a good man. Stubborn, but good. Be happy, little moon." Tears pricked Lysandra's eyes. Theron gently took the ring and slipped it onto her right hand. "Until I can put a proper bonding ring on your left." "I don't need—" "I know. But I want to give you everything anyway. Will you let me?" Looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability, the hope, the love he'd been hiding, Lysandra knew her answer. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." As he kissed her again, the moon rose full and bright, blessing the union fate had always intended. Below, howls rose in celebration. The unmated king had found his queen, and she had found her home. 6 months later, morning sun streamed through the royal chambers where Lysandra lay wrapped in silk sheets and her mate's arms. "You're awake," Theron murmured against her neck. "The ceremony is today," she reminded him. "Our official coronation." "They can wait." He pulled her closer. "I'd rather stay here with my queen." "Not queen yet," she laughed. "You've been queen since the moment you stood up to Aldrich. Today is just paperwork." A knock interrupted. "Your Majesties," Captain Zara called. "Corvus insists you need breakfast. He's threatening to break down the door." "He's 90 years old," Theron called back. The door burst open with magical force. Corvus strode in, averting his eyes. "Moonweaver magic runs in my family too. Distant cousin. Now up. Half the kingdom has come." As they dressed, Lysandra in elegant silver, Theron in black and gold, Corvus updated them. Every noble house is represented. They're curious about the Omega who broke Duke Shadowmere. How is Aldrich? Lysandra asked, surprised to find she felt only pity. Exiled to the far territories. Still unbonded. That's permanent. But I heard he's taken up scholarship, studying ancient texts about mate bonds. Perhaps he'll find redemption in knowledge. And Lady Celeste? Working as a governess. Honest work for honest pay. The throne room had been transformed with silver and gold banners, moonflowers, and mountain roses. As they entered, Lysandra saw familiar faces, palace servants she'd elevated to positions worthy of their talents. The ceremony was beautiful but anticlimactic. The restructured High Council pronounced their blessing. Lord Whitmore, the new chief counselor, placed the crown on her head with genuine respect. As tradition dictated, the new queen could make 3 royal decrees. Lysandra stood and addressed the assembly. First, I decree that sanctuary laws be strengthened. Any wolf seeking protection from an abusive mate shall receive it, no questions asked. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Second, rejection of a mate bond becomes permanent and irreversible after 24 hours. No more games. Louder approval, especially from Omegas. And third, the old bloodline hierarchies are dissolved. Noble or common, all wolves will be judged by their actions, not their birth. The room erupted. Shocked gasps, then applause starting with servants, spreading to younger nobles, eventually even elderly lords nodding approval. Later at the feast, Corvus approached. Bold moves. Your parents would be proud. No regrets? He asked gently. Lysandra thought about it. 6 months ago, she'd been a terrified Omega running from a cruel mate. Now she was queen, mated to a man who loved her beyond reason, changing laws that had hurt so many. How could I regret the path that led me here? As if sensing her gaze, Theron looked up, face lighting when he saw her. He excused himself and approached. Dance with me? Forever, she promised. As they swayed together, Theron whispered, I have something to tell you. Corvus confirmed it. The increased appetite, heightened senses, your scent changing. Her eyes widened. We're having a pup, he confirmed, hand moving protectively to her stomach. Part Moonweaver, part Blackmore, fully loved. Tears of joy spilled down her cheeks as she kissed him. The crowd erupted. Their queen was pregnant, the succession secured. That night on their balcony, watching the city celebrate, Lysandra marveled at her journey. Do you ever think about how different things might have been? She asked. Theron pulled her against his chest. The thought of you with him. Perhaps the moon goddess knew what she was doing. So you could catch me when I fell? So we could catch each other. I was falling too, into darkness. You saved me as much as I saved you. She turned in his arms. Then we're even. Never. I'll spend our lives trying to be worthy of you. Stubborn Alpha. Stubborn Omega, he countered, kissing her. As the moon rose, the same that witnessed her desperate flight 6 months ago, Lysandra sent up a prayer of gratitude. The rejected Omega had become a queen. The broken bond had led to a stronger one. The sanctuary she'd begged for had become home. And the Alpha King who'd hidden her? He'd given her protection, purpose, and love that would last forever. What he did next really had changed everything.